The number is 800-8949, 800-8949 to get on the David Tulis Show. I do thank you for giving me just a couple minutes of your time. We have a lot on our plate today, and I feel like I'm giving short shrift to things that are important. And one thing I want to mention, and that is the story that from Avery Gray, the posting this morning. We have it on our Facebook page. Avery Gray, the dad, posting a video of his daughter's seizure and arrest, waiting in a parked car. The engine is running, the air conditioning is on, and she is behind the wheel, age 14, waiting for a family member or for some private personal business to be done. And she's dragged out of the car by police officers downtown. And the question, of course, that I ask of Rob Simmons, the Tennessee, the Chattanooga police spokesman, is what is the statutory authority? That's my question. And partly I'm swayed by the way it sounds and the way it looks. Whenever you have a cop dragging somebody out of a car, we've had hundreds of videos we've seen in the past 4 or 5 years of this happening. People end up getting shot. Glass is broken. You have the Lord's name in vain used. You have profanity and obscenities from the officer. You have people resisting, standing on their rights, and we have the executive state in all of its finest apparel in these scenes, even justified in actual murder. The officers murdering the citizen, and in the end, well, we know it's okay because it's all for the greater good. That is the rationale of modern progressivism, which controls today, right? Which is the controlling paradigm against which we here on the David Tulis Show resist very slightly and very graciously. There's a statute that deals with children and neglect. It's 39-15-401, child abuse and child neglect or endangerment. And I don't have marked what I want to mention to you, but that there is a provision, and Rob Simmons finding the reason for the officers dragging this girl from the car amid screams, and it's a very disturbing video. Though the girl is not beaten, as far as that we have in view, though her wrists are injured by the very courageous use of wrist cuffs against her. And we don't have details right now, but Avery Gray has posted the video, and it is a Chattanooga viral police arrest video of the kind that we want to see. We want to see these, and we are the station, the media, the press platform, David Tulis, in which you report and the world decides. I say we're not in the media because Andy Burke wants to make sure that whatever David Tulis tells you, don't believe him. He's not in the media. That is the reigning paradigm in city government, from a mayor who does not return phone calls and will not meet with me, though I would like to meet with him for points of mutual interest and benefit. And I still have in a request for a meeting. I've been waiting now for a couple of months to have a reply back from administration in city government. Now there is the statute, and so you can't. I've not found it, so I really don't want to mention it anymore. But I will give you the citation: Tennessee Code annotated 39-15-401. That's the child neglect and endangerment statute that presumptively, at least at this early point, is the basis of the seizure and arrest of a girl who is standing her ground and is subject to the state's superior claims, if we are to look at this from the police perspective. This is David Tulis, and we have asked Rob Simmons to get back with us about the Avery Gray video that had this morning, when I went on the air, already 38,000 views and 56 comments on all sides, of course. And we are here at Nuga Radio 92.7, and I want to say something about another post, and we're talking, of course, about the website for The Man Who Matters and the Woman Who Matters here in Chattanooga, and that is yournews.com, or the predecessor in the hot platform Nuganomics.com. On Nuganomics, there's a story that I put out this morning from about East Ridge, and it is a kind of an explainer letter that members of the city council got from my hand, except this one is It's revised, and I've done my very best to make it more accessible and make it not say easier to digest. Now, there's a version of this story, by the way, already online in short form. You can read that at EastRidgeNewsOnline.com. That's East Ridge News Online, published by a veteran Chattanooga area journalist, and that's Dick Cook. And that's, if you're here in East Ridge, make sure you subscribe to Dick Cook's website, and that's EastRidgeNewsOnline.com. I'd originally planned to ask Dick to publish my explainer letter, but as I began working on it, I realized that it was too long, it was redundant, and it had really more detail. So I started from scratch and just cut the thing down to about 500 words. And you can read the short form at EastRidgeNewsOnline.com. But the longer version for the man who realizes that he's onto something, right, with my analysis, he's onto something major, will want to read the longer explainer piece at Nuganomics.com. And there I'm giving a discussion about Title 55, which is the controlling statute for transportation. And I told my partner here at the radio station that I was going to forswear I forswore that I would cover this topic for a while, because I apparently, since it is a pet hobby of mine, a pet project, Title 55 reform, that I'm abusing my listener. So I've abstained from this intercourse, if you will, for a couple of weeks now. But I thought today, since I've posted this story, this is my best shot on the question of police reform and defense of the poor and defense of immigrants, that I would mention it today. And you can read the story at Nuganomics.com. And the headline is, "Cities Poor Get Relief, Cops Avoid Liability Suits and then Fruits of Administrative Notice." This is a story about my project on administrative notice, transportation administrative notice. I know it sounds awfully boring, but it is a counter-revolutionary proposal. And here it is, that the state obey the statute. That's all I'm arguing for, that the state become obedient to the statute, which is in Tennessee Code Annotated 55, and that's the transportation statute. Now, the problem is it is visible only if you're a Christian, I would say, and if you are someone who believes in constitutionally guaranteed, God-given, inalienable, and inherent rights, right? That's what you're given at birth. And what we've done is trade in our rights. We've traded in the inalienable rights. Of course, we maintain always the unalienable ones, those that are implanted in you, written in you by God himself. The inalienable rights are lesser ones that we can trade and traffic in, which most of us have done. And we've done that by having relations with the state in equity, by applying for some benefit or something and becoming submitted to it. And that in the matter of movement of your person by car or truck, that is through Title 55 and to the Department of Safety and Homeland Security by application. So we've done that by becoming licensees and given up antecedent rights that are said by Neil Pinkston, the DA, and by the Tennessee Supreme Court to not exist, rights that were apparently extinguished, not really extinguished, but pretendedly extinguished by the 1938 Driver's License Act and other provisions of the Tennessee Code Annotated that came to be known as the transportation law. Now, my problem is that the law is not obeyed and that the law is being enforced too broadly. It's a law, you could say, that's a foot wide, okay? And here I am holding my two hands a foot apart on either side of my microphone, but it's being enforced as if it were 3 yards wide. So I'm holding my left hand here in front of my YouTube camera at Nuga Radio, and then over on the wall there, the carpeted wall at our wonderful studio at 92.7, there is the extent of the enforcement. It goes that far away. Well, who is in the 1 foot parameter of the statute? Well, people involved in transportation. That'd be dump truck drivers, ambulance drivers, haulers, cabbies, Uber operators, pole truck operators, people who are in the moving business, people who are in the wrecker business. These all are involved in transportation. And that's pursuant to the state law and also to federal law. The federal statute at U.S. Code 49 all about transportation, all about the for-profit use of the roadways. And you say, well, this is, so what? This is just, you're putting me to sleep, David Toulis. You're just knocking me out here. Well, the problem is that I would say it's acceptable, provisionally acceptable, to have the state regulate for-profit use of the road. That's called in court cases the extraordinary use of the people's asset, right? The roads belong to the people. Boulevards, thoroughfares, avenues, roadways, highways, lanes, they're all people products. They're owned by the people. The state is merely the steward of them. And if it regulates any part of the use of those pieces of infrastructure, it's for the public good, right? For the public health, safety, and welfare. Those are the three categories that allow the state to invoke police powers and to effectively own the activity subject to that power. And that would be the for-profit use, the capitalistic, free market, entrepreneurial, profit-seeking use of the roadway. Okay, that's fine. Well, that's the 1 foot. Okay, I'm holding my hands apart here in front of YouTube. 1 foot apart. That's the statute, right? The statute in Title 55 covers all those people involved in the for-profit capitalist capital creation use of the roadway. But the rest of the people who are also subject in practice to the law, but not subject to the law itself, are people like you. And here now I'm talking about you in your private car or your private pickup, your private minivan, your private van. You are not involved in transportation. It's that simple. And I'm saying that's true because I'm looking at the law. Title 55 is all about transportation, but not about you. And so what I've done is a public service to East Ridge, to Sheriff Jim Hammond, to Chattanooga City Council, to city of Dunlap, or city of Dayton, rather, and to the city of East Ridge, is to provide a public service, which is simply the reading of the law and the recitation of the statute and the definitions, and many court cases. That's what I've done. Cite state court cases and federal court cases that indicate that the right to travel does exist, and that it is in fact more than the activist Tennessee judiciary pretends it to be. The court says that travel is only the right to relocate from one state to the other. You have a freedom to relocate your address, to move your domicile, and that is all that travel is. But that, my friend, is a legal fiction. It is a legal fiction from an activist judiciary which will not hear appeal. And I'm the journalist in Tennessee who covers this topic, and I'm current with the proceedings before the High Court. The High Court rejected recently a petition for writ of certiorari from Jay Hirsch in Middle Tennessee, a businessman, devout Christian, by the way, making the best case against the establishment, the white legal establishment narrative I think that's ever been made. The hegemony of the state over travel, pretending that it's all transportation, is long and standing and has been resistant to change for decades, even though there have been some pretty decent cases. Jay Hirsch is the best of them. And the state will not hear his appeal. It will not hear an appeal of a truly abusive prosecution in Lawrence County Circuit Court back in 2015, covered by me here, David Toulis, in detail, covered in detail. Now, the reform that I'm proposing is local economy, is loving your neighbor and buying local. And the people I have in view to protect are the officers of our police departments. They are officers who are in their jurisdictions facing personal ruin. And they're facing personal ruin because once their bosses have been notified about the limits on the statute, the bosses have a duty to restrain their activity, right? They have a duty to restrain the enforcement of the traffic statute, the transportation statute, to only people who are involved in transportation. So if the officer, not having heard about this notice, enforces the transportation statute against somebody not involved in transportation, well, guess what? He's personally liable. He's personally liable for a tortious action. He can be said to have enforced a statute against someone whom he knew legally was not subject to it, and so he is personally vulnerable. So my concern is for Tennessee Highway Patrol officers, deputies of Sheriff Jim Hammond. There are 100 or so of those. There are 500 police officers in Chattanooga involved in what's called law enforcement. And if they're involving themselves in enforcing the statute against upon transportation and parties involved in transportation, they're all personally chargeable under the oppression statute and also civilly for abuse. And so my concern is for the individual officer, and I have to focus it that way. The project is aimed at the officer. The officer is vulnerable if he enforces the statute beyond the notice, right? Beyond the warrant of the law, beyond the focus, beyond the purview, if you will, of the statute. If he goes beyond it, well, he's acting in personal capacity. He's acting under color of law, but not under law. And so my concern is here in East Ridge that these officers here, that they realize that there is this problem. There's a legal dilemma that the high court has put them into, and the high court has put them into this position because the high court has effectively rejected the law, rejected the scope of the law, and is pretending that the law is broader than it is, but it's not. In many court cases would support this contention. And so there's a conflict in Tennessee policy in practice. The conflict is as against the statute, as against constitutional rights of the people. And so between them, suspended between them, are these officers, thousands and thousands of cops, deputies, highway patrol troopers, and the like. I've notified Governor Haslam of my findings also. So his people, which are THP people, are also personally vulnerable. Now, I say that in their defense. I say that to effectively to warn them that their bosses are not being straight with them. And that's the question here in Hamilton County. If you, my listener, are a deputy, do you know what the scope of the law is? Your boss has been notified. He's been notified. Matt Lee promised he would get back with me as to response on what is in practice now. And he then told me, we're not going to get back to you. We will not comment on it. And the Sheriff's Department has not given a rebuttal to this notice either. So without rebuttal, guess what? The claims about the statute, the report about the statute legally stands. It stands without rebuttal. And there has been, on my part, there has been certification of notice, right? Notice was given and notice has been served. And so we just have to wait. We just have to wait to see which officer is the first to be sued for abuse by someone who knows what the statute says, has heard about the notice project. Now, in the essay at nukenomics.com today, what I'm doing partly is explaining my motives. And my motives are, as a devout Christian, my concern is for the poor and the minority. For example, Omariel Woods here in East Ridge, a young man, has never had a driver's license, and yet he's burdened by fines that he obtained for convictions for driving on a revoked. How can you have a revoked license if you've never had a license? He's a man operating freely on the road, and yet he's under harassment. I saw him in court just last week when I was there as well. There he was in the back row. Many other people, minorities, poor, immigrants, and people who are ignorant of their rights and cannot afford an attorney. They are the ones who are being ground under by this city court machinery and police machinery in East Ridge, in Chattanooga, and in every point beyond throughout the state. 95 counties in our state, we have the same problem. And so what I'm doing is I'm starting a reform locally, and all I'm doing is just providing a service of notice, reading the law, reading the court cases. There are about 50 court cases that touch on this question. And I've read them, and I've made note of them, and have large folders where they're all marked, highlighted with commentary in the margins of my reading of these cases. And so the law is clear, and there is a reform that's needed. The reform is in practice. This is called local economy. And so I'm trying to bring about a godly end as a charitable Christian, particularly vis-a-vis the black race, the African-American race, that my race back in the 1800s oppressed, and even in the 1900s oppressed by Jim Crow and anti-black practice, anti-black regulation, and the like, state oppression. The redlining of Chattanooga, that was in the 1940s, done by the Roosevelt administration's executive agencies. We have that, my race as against that race, and this is my personal reparation, white race to black race, David Toulis to the black man, the black woman here in Hamilton County. And that's all I can do is just provide the benefit that I have, which happens to be knowledge. And that is what I'm trying to interest you, my listener, in. Make sure you go to Nuganomics.com or just do a Google on transportation administrative notice. It's a great project, very slow, a little boring, but it has the potential for great relief among thousands and thousands of people in Tennessee once it takes a hold. It has to take a hold in a particular location, in a particular county or city first. And let's see what happens if Mayor Lambert, or Mayor Burke, or others make note. David Toulis, Nuga Radio, and now some great, wonderful sponsors I'd like to hear you to hear about. David Toulis, thanks.
3, 2, 1.
Chatter, Nuga Radio, Digital FM 95.3 HD4, 92.7 FM's news now.
A Polk County man arrested with what police call a large amount of meth.